Welcome to the Private School Leader Podcast, where private school leaders learn how to thrive and not just survive as they serve and lead their schools. I strongly believe that it is possible to have a long and happy and fulfilling career as a private school leader. And my passion is to help you figure out exactly how to do just that, right here on the Private School Leader Podcast. And I'm your host, Mark Minkus. So in the week between Christmas Day and New Year's Day, if you happen to be watching television, for example, some football or, just a show that has commercials, what you'll notice is that there are a lot of commercials that are about gym memberships. In fact, when you watch the Times Square ball drop whatever channel you happen to watch that on, or if you see highlights, you'll notice that for several years now, it's been sponsored by Planet Fitness. And they spend millions of dollars for all the people in Times Square to be wearing glasses that say the next year, or to have a hat that says Planet Fitness. So why so much money spent on TV ads and spent on people in Times Square on New Year's Eve for gym memberships? Well, it's because we typically try to make New Year's resolutions, and most New Year's resolutions fall into the category of want to get in shape or be more productive. And so we have good intentions, and sometimes we turn those intentions into a New Year's resolution or several of them. But you also know that, depending on which study you look at, that around 80% of New Year's resolutions don't even make it to the first week of February. And as private school leaders, I really think that what we need to resolve, to promise ourselves to really focus on for the new year, is not necessarily more effort, not necessarily more discipline, not necessarily more productivity hacks. I just think there's one thing that we need to do, and do it more consistently. And on today's episode of the Private School Leader Podcast, I'm going to try to persuade you that if you only make one New Year's resolution, to please make this one. So 2 things real quick before we jump into that topic. And that is, I want to ask you if you want to, as the calendar turns from December to January, if you want to make the second half of this school year better than the first half, I have one coaching spot open right now, and I would love to hear more about your biggest struggle, more about your biggest goal, and I can help you overcome that struggle. I can help you reach that goal. And maybe you don't have a goal. Your goal is to get out of survival mode. Well, I can help with that too. And so if you are interested in finding more about that, you can do one of 2 things. You can go to theprivateschoolleader.com/coaching. You can shoot me an email at mark.o.minkus@gmail.com and just say, tell me more. And we can connect on Zoom for a free 20-minute kind of get to know you call and go from there. But I do have one coaching spot open. I'd love for you to grab it before it's gone. So shoot me an email at mark.o.minkus@gmail.com. And I'll help you make the second half of this school year better than the first half. And then I'm also excited to share with you a resource that's fairly new that I created about a month or 2 ago. And this one's called The 6 Keys to Improving Your Relationship with Your Board. And the most important relationship in our private schools is the one between the board and the head of school. And I think that there's always room for improvement in that relationship. And so this free guide is a 7-page PDF where I give you specific strategies to strengthen your relationships with your board members. So go to theprivateschoolleader.com/board to grab your free guide called The 6 Keys to Improving Your Relationship with Your Board. That's theprivateschoolleader.com/board. Okay. So what is this New Year's resolution where I just want you to make one, and I think that it can change a lot of things for you in this new year that's about to begin? Here's the resolution. this year, I'm going to pause. This year, I'm going to pause. Just pause. And there's a quote that I've shared many times before on this podcast from Viktor Frankl, the author of Man's Search for Meaning, and he says, between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response, and in our response lies our growth and our freedom. I want to ask you a question. I want you to think back on this past year at school, and I want you to think about how long do you pause between stimulus and response? There's supposed to be a space between stimulus and response. How big is that space? How long do you pause between stimulus and response? So the stimulus is you come back from being out and about in the school and you need a dopamine hit, and there's your email inbox. Do you pause, or do you just open your email inbox and get that dopamine hit? There's a parent that's upset, and do you immediately start to get stressed and anxious, or do you pause? There's a teacher that's coming in hot into your office, all upset, all dramatic, and they're upset about something that objectively is not that big of a deal. Do you immediately adopt their level of frustration? Do you immediately match their energy, or do you pause? What about student behavior? Someone texts you and says, oh man, I need you to come to room whatever, or, Justin is, or Sadie, they're, doing XYZ again. Do we pause? Even if it's for a second, even if it's for 2 seconds. What about when you get a text or an email from a board member? The stimulus is that teacher coming in hot. How big is the space between that stimulus and your response? The stimulus is that student behavior issue. How long do you pause between that stimulus and your response? The stimulus is that email or text from a board member. How long do you pause between that stimulus and your response? The problem isn't the stimulus. That's the job. We're going to have all of these things, emails and upset parents and teachers that are, crashing out, and students that are misbehaving, and board members that are micromanaging. That's the job. The problem is that we don't pause enough, in my opinion, and sometimes there's no space between stimulus and response. And when we eliminate that pause, we are reactive. We react instead of respond, and that usually leads to problems. We just absorb the stress of the situation, and we carry that around, and then we get more anxious and we get more emotionally dysregulated. When we eliminate the pause, when we don't pause, we start solving problems that aren't ours to solve. We keep solving problems for years and years and years that aren't ours to solve. And when we don't pause, we often say things that we later regret, or we make decisions that we later regret. And so, if I'm trying to get you to only make one New Year's resolution, and that resolution is this year I'm going to pause, then I want to give you three specific things, three specific ways that looks for you. 3 ways that looks for you at school. We're going to keep it really simple. This year I'm going to pause. 3 ways you can practice the pause. Okay. Number 1, you're going to pause and ask who before asking how. You're going to pause and ask who before asking how. So if you're a private school leader, you very, very likely have a strong bias towards action and towards problem solving and for expediting things and for seeing a problem and immediately going into action to solve the problem. That makes you really good at your job. How do I fix this? How can I take care of this? What resources do I need? How quickly can I handle this? But this is kind of a trap. It's like a leadership trap. Because sometimes the best thing about you, the thing that makes you really, really good at your job, also gets you stuck. And if you don't pause and ask who before asking how, how am I going to fix this? Or when am I going to fix this? If you don't pause and ask who, then you end up working on low-value tasks. You end up working on things that other people should be doing because it's in their job description, and it doesn't make you a jerk. It makes you a good leader if you're having people do the things that they're supposed to do. If you don't pause and you just immediately jump in, then some other problems are that you become the bottleneck for decisions. I coach several leaders who they are the bottleneck in their school. Every decision has to come through them. And the scale of those decisions slows everything down. And it creates frustration for people at their school, and it creates frustration for the leader. And another thing that happens if you don't pause and ask who instead of how is sometimes you end up, because this is true about me, I wonder if it's true about you, you complain about delegation, but you secretly avoid delegating. Let me hit you with that again. You complain about delegating, but we secretly avoid delegating. So what does that pause look like or sound like? It's just you literally, when a task comes across your desk, your radar, your ears, your texts, a phone call, an email, a note on your desk, whatever it is, that task appears. A person standing in front of you telling you something, and you're standing there listening with the intent to respond, and you've already got the problem half solved, but while they're still talking, okay? That you pause and you say who instead of how in your head. Who could do this? Not how do I fix this? Now, I know what you're saying. I know what you're thinking. You're like, listen, most of the stuff, the answer is me. Okay? So if I'm asking, if I'm in that situation and I'm like asking who, let's just say 50% of the time, or maybe even 80% of the time. Let's say 80% of the time, the answer is you are the person. When you ask who, let's just say 80% of the time, the answer is you. But you know what? That 20% of the time, when the answer is someone else, that is going to create margin in your day. That is going to help you get better at delegating. That is going to make your job more sustainable. That is going to help you have a long and happy and fulfilling career as a private school leader. Because the private school leaders who burn out and get ulcers or shingles or migraines or vertigo or stroke-like symptoms or high blood pressure or have a very strained marriage or all of the other things, they're the ones that never pause and ask who. They just do it. And they have zero margin, and that is not sustainable. And I want to give you a very specific example of something of this what we're talking about that just happened a couple of weeks ago. So I was on Zoom with one of my coaching clients, Joe. He's out in California. And Joe, before we started working together, textbook, high performer, high energy, high motor, doing all the things all the time, never asking who, just immediately going into how. And here's the other thing. We take pride in that we're the go-to person and that we can fix pretty much anything and like, bring it on, I've got this. Okay, I get that part, and I felt that way too. But again, it's not sustainable. And so, I've been coaching into Joe for a while, and just a few weeks ago, I was on a Zoom call. It was towards the end of his school day. It was after school. There was a basketball practice going on. We're coaching. And I can hear it on the walkie-talkie. It says, hey, there's a construction vehicle blocking the entrance to gate whatever. And in the basketball practice, the parents aren't going to be able to get into ... And he stood halfway up out of his chair, and then he paused, and he sat back down. And then he got on the walkie-talkie, and he said, "Hey, Mr. Tom, could you go out and talk to the construction people and, see if they can move that vehicle?" And then he radioed a different person, someone that was working in the office, and asked her, "Can you please text the parent, the team, let's say it was the girls basketball team, the team parent group, and ask them to please pick up at this other entrance to the gym so that they didn't have to worry about coming in that way." But he had stood up halfway out of his chair. He was going to end the Zoom call. We were only halfway through the hour. Go talk to the construction people himself, and probably send that text himself to the parent group text of the girls basketball team. But he paused in real time in front of me, in plain sight. I was watching it happen in real time. Joe paused, and he asked who instead of how. And he got his maintenance person and someone in the office involved, and then we continued our session. It was beautiful. It was amazing. It was encouraging. It was inspirational. It was very rewarding to see him make that progress. What about you? Do you pause and ask how, or do you go right into who? So if one New Year's resolution that you're going to make is to pause, one of the ways is to ask who first before how. The second way is to pause and say, "I'm safe." To pause and say, "I'm safe." And I'm not going to talk about this one too much because we talk a lot on this podcast about fight or flight and about emotional dysregulation. When a parent confronts you or a board member criticizes you or micromanages you, or that email comes through with capital letters. Your amygdala doesn't know that you are leading a private school in a very complex time in the history of America, with polarization, with high expectations, with complexities all around and expectations all around. Your amygdala doesn't understand that. Your amygdala thinks that email or that board member or that parent or that teacher that's coming in hot, they think your fight or flight thinks it's a physical threat. And then that's when you start to feel that in your body. The cortisol and the adrenaline flood your brain and your bloodstream, and your blood races to your extremities, and your blood pressure goes up and your heart rate goes up. It's ready to flee. But you're sitting there at your desk. Because fight or flight is great for physical threats, but it's terrible for psychological or existential threats. It's called amygdala hijack. I'll link that in the show notes at theprivateschoolleader.com/episode 167 as to how to avoid amygdala hijack, that episode. But if you pause in that moment, remember the space between stimulus and response. We're trying to make that space a little bit bigger by pausing. If you pause and say to yourself, "I'm safe," it's worked for me. It's worked for many of my coaching clients. It's something that's supported by research is that it works for many people. It's not going to work for everyone. But just that phrase, "I'm safe," can actually deactivate the fight or flight response, because you're sending a message to your autonomic nervous system that I'm physically safe. I don't have to outrun the grizzly bear. This is a psychological threat. This is an existential threat. This is something I've handled 100 times already this school year. I'm safe. And your body will start to regulate. I want you to try it the next time that you start to get, the fight or flight kicks in because of the stress of a situation that you deal with. And just pause and say, "I'm safe." And then let me know. Shoot me an email. I would love to give you this gift of not having your fight or flight response kick in 5 times a day. Because that little sentence, "I'm safe," tells your body, this isn't life or death. I don't need to fight an enemy. I don't need to flee from a grizzly bear. I can just handle this problem. So we're going to pause, and you're just going to say to yourself, I'm safe. And then the third and final way, as we start to wrap this up, is to pause before opening your email inbox. Pause before opening your email inbox. I want to give you a little disclaimer here. Sometimes I repeat things. Well, I'm about to tell you something I've already said on this podcast several times. You can tune out if you want to. I don't want you to tune out because I think that we need to hear things many times. But you've heard me say that your email inbox is a chronological list of everyone else's priorities, and that's true. You've heard me say that your email inbox is where productivity goes to die, and that's also true. You've heard me talk about the productivity trap, where you're out and about in the school and you come back to your desk and you've got some physical fatigue and some expended some emotional energy, and you've got some cognitive load, and your brain is screaming for a dopamine hit. Your brain will give you that dopamine hit if you open up your email inbox and start responding to a few emails, because the brain doesn't know the difference between a low-value task and a high-value task. And then we get addicted to that dopamine, and that's why we get addicted to our email inbox. I coach people who they know exactly what the number is inside that little parentheses of unread emails. And if it gets below a certain number, they're like an addict. It doesn't matter what they're doing. They have to stop what they're doing and respond to emails to get that number down to below that number. I'm not criticizing them. I'm just saying that's how powerful the connection/addiction is to our email inbox. A lot of it has to do with that dopamine hit. It's called the productivity trap. You've heard me talk about that before. But I would say about 95% of school leaders, when they come back from somewhere and they sit down at their desk, that's the first thing that they do is open their email inbox. Or if they're out and about in the school and they have their smartphone, or even worse, if you're at home and you're on the couch or you're thinking about school or whatever, is you open up your smartphone and you tap on that icon for the school email. You get that little dopamine hit. But we're going to pause before we open our email inbox. And I really believe that most of us don't have the self-discipline to stay out of our email inbox by ourselves. And so we need to create friction. And again, repetitive alert. I've told this story before. I'm going to tell you it to you again. So we have Walmart Plus. My daughter bought me that as a Christmas gift about 3 or 4 years ago. It's amazing. I'm not an affiliate sponsor. I don't get anything for promoting Walmart Plus, but you go on the app, you make your shopping list, and then, a few hours later it shows up on your front porch. Greatest gift I ever got. Earlier this year, I go out there, get the groceries off the front porch. I'm bringing them in, and there is a party size package of Oreos, and I love Oreos. And I said to my wife, why would you buy a party-sized package of Oreos? And she's like, because you like Oreos. And so I put them on the counter. And in my head, I said, well, I'm only going to eat 3 Oreos a day. But what happened was I walked through the kitchen, and every time I walked through the kitchen, I ate 3 Oreos. Every time I walked through the kitchen. And so then they were all gone. And then the next time we get a Walmart Plus order, there's another package of a party size, not family size, party size package of Oreos. And I'm like, I said to my wife, what are you doing? Well, you like Oreos. Okay. Well, fortunately, we had just recently reorganized our Tupperware cupboard and threw some stuff out, and there was room in there, and I just set the Oreos 18 inches higher than where they were on the countertop. Now they're inside of the Tupperware cupboard. behind a door. And I said to myself, I'm only going to eat 3 Oreos a day. And then every single day when I went through the kitchen and I didn't see the Oreos on the counter, every once in a while I'd be like, oh yeah, Oreos. And I would open up the cupboard and I'd take out 3 Oreos and I'd close the cupboard. It was only 18 inches different, but I created friction between me and the Oreos, and I was able to only eat 3 per day until they were all gone. And so, how are you going to create that friction between you and your email inbox on your smartphone and on your laptop or your desktop? On your smartphone, when you light up your phone, how many swipes do you have to go to get to your icon for your school email? Most people, the answer is 0. Most people, it's on their home screen. But if you were to move that icon 1 or 2 swipes, my coaching clients report that within 2 weeks, they're checking email 80 to 85% less often. I just had a client tell me last week that this was a huge game changer in less than a week, in just a few days. So create friction so that your thumb knows exactly where that spot is, because some of my clients will replace that spot where they move the email school icon from and replace it with a Bible app, or replace it with like their library book, audio book app or something. And then throughout the day, throughout the evening, especially at home, they'll look and there'll be like a Bible verse on their phone, or there'll be like the book that they're reading from the library app is on their phone. You know why? Because their thumb is subconsciously going to that spot and opening email. It's now become involuntary. And so we have to create that friction. So 2 swipes on your smartphone, and then on your laptop or your desktop, we're going to open a window and close the tab. And so if you are, let's say you're using Chrome or Firefox or Safari, whatever that icon is at the bottom of your screen, let's say it's Chrome, hover over it, right click, it says new window. Open a new window, go into that window and open your email for school. Then hover back over the Chrome image, 2 squares will pop up. Go back to the one where your tabs are open all day long, and then close your email. So now where your laptop or your desktop is with all the tabs open at the top, and for some of you, also the little parentheses with the number of how many unread emails there are. Now you've created friction between you and your email inbox. And then the final piece to that is to schedule time to work on your email. And you're like, I don't understand how to do that. That's fine. In the show notes, I'll link an episode, the 4 productivity hacks for busy private school leaders, and it teaches you how to have times in the day where you're claiming white space, where you go into your email at certain times of the day instead of all day long. Creating friction so that you can pause before you open your email inbox will be a huge game changer for you. So, if we want to just make one New Year's resolution, I'm trying to persuade you that this year, your New Year's resolution is, this year, I'm going to pause. And there are 3 ways, even if you just picked one of these, that I'm trying to convince you that you could use this pause in this new year. Number 1, pause and ask who before asking how. Number 2, pause and say I'm safe so that you can turn off that fight or flight response. And number 3 is to pause before opening your email inbox. If 3 seems overwhelming, just do 1. But your call to action is to pause. And so a quick reminder, if you want the second half of your school year to be better than the first, I'd love to help you with that. Shoot me an email at mark.o.minkus@gmail.com and just say, tell me more. And then another reminder that I want to give you a free gift to say thank you for listening to the podcast, the 6 keys to improving your relationship with your board. Just go to theprivateschoolleader.com/board to grab that. And if you would please share a link to this episode or a link to the podcast with another leader in your life or a rising leader at your school, I would really, really appreciate it. I'm on Instagram at the Private School Leader. And if you have a minute over break to just go to wherever you listen to the podcast and write a review and rate the podcast, that actually helps to push it out, the algorithm to push it out as suggested content so that private school leaders all over the world can hear this, get this help that you get here on the podcast as well. I value you. I appreciate you. I'm so impressed by you and so thankful for you and all the amazing hard work that you're doing at your school. Thank you for taking some of that precious time out of your week to join me here today. And I'll see you next time right here on the Private School Leader Podcast. And until then, always remember to serve first, lead second, and make a difference.